Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down the anatomy of a monster storm, Hurricane Melissa. This thing didn't just barrel through the Caribbean, it completely rewrote the record books. So we're going to dig into how it was born, what gave it such terrifying power, and where its destructive path is headed next.
Okay, to really get a handle on Melissa's sheer strength, you've got to see where it stands in history. This wasn't just another bad storm. This was a true record breaker. Now, with hurricanes, it's kind of counterintuitive. The lower the central pressure, the more powerful the storm. And at 892 millibars, well, Melissa has now tied for the most intense hurricane to ever make landfall in the Atlantic, right alongside the legendary 1935 Labor Day hurricane.
And that incredibly low pressure, it whipped up some absolutely ferocious winds. At its peak, Melissa was churning at a sustained 185 miles per hour. That's 295 kilometers per hour. Just let that sink in. That puts it right up there with the most powerful Atlantic storms we've ever seen.
So the big question is, how on earth does a storm like this even happen? To really understand the damage it caused, we need to go all the way back to the beginning and see how all the ingredients came together to create this monster.
Right, so every hurricane has an origin story, and Melissa starts thousands of miles away. It began as just a seemingly harmless little ripple in the atmosphere coming off the coast of Africa.
Okay, check out this timeline. On October 16th, meteorologists start watching a tropical wave, basically a little disturbance off West Africa. 5 days later, over the super warm waters of the Caribbean, it gets its act together and becomes Tropical Storm Melissa. And then everything changes. On the 25th, it was like it hit the accelerator. It just exploded in strength, rocketing to a Category 5 by the 27th, right before it slams into Jamaica a day later. We're talking less than 2 weeks to go from a blip on the radar to one of the strongest hurricanes of the century. So what was the secret ingredient here?
Well, the secret was the ocean itself. This storm found some serious high-octane fuel sitting right there in the water, which led to that terrifyingly fast power-up. This wasn't just normal storm development. This was a straight-up explosion of energy.
Now, scientists have a name for this kind of explosive growth. They call it rapid intensification. The official definition is when a storm's winds increase by at least 35 miles per hour in just a 24-hour window. This is what forecasters absolutely dread, because it can turn a storm that seems manageable into an absolute catastrophe with very little warning for anyone in its path. So what was the fuel for this explosion? It's pretty simple, actually. Unusually warm ocean water. You can think of hurricanes as these giant heat engines, and Melissa's engine got supercharged by ocean temperatures that were way, way warmer than they should have been. And we're not talking about a small difference here. The water was 2 to 3 degrees Celsius warmer than average. That's about 3.5 to over 5 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, that might not sound like a huge number to you and me, but for a hurricane, that's like pouring gasoline on a fire.
This extra heat didn't just cause rapid intensification by the book, it completely shattered the definition. Melissa's wind speed literally doubled in less than a day. I mean, that kind of power surge is one of the most extreme ever recorded, and it set the stage for an absolutely devastating landfall. All of that pent-up energy had to be released somewhere, and that brings us to the moment this super-fueled storm unleashed its full fury on land. This was ground zero. On October 28th, Melissa slammed into Jamaica, becoming the strongest storm to hit the island since they started keeping records 174 years ago. And it made landfall at its absolute peak strength, which is a rare and truly devastating thing to witness. The impact was so immediate, so severe, that the Jamaican Prime Minister's assessment was tragically simple. He just said, the island is a disaster area.
And the reports that started coming in from the ground just paint a grim, grim picture. We're talking widespread power outages, roads completely blocked by trees and debris, and catastrophic flash flooding. Roofs were literally torn from buildings. And so tragically, at least 8 people were confirmed to have lost their lives in Jamaica alone.
But Melissa wasn't done yet. After it crossed over Jamaica, the island's mountains did manage to disrupt the storm a bit, weakening it. But weakened is a relative term here. It was still an extremely dangerous Category 3 hurricane, packing 120-mile-per-hour winds as it took aim at its next target, Cuba.
And this is a really important point. The damage wasn't just limited to where the eye of the storm made landfall. Even before it hit Jamaica and Cuba, Melissa's massive outer bands were causing deadly flash floods and landslides in Haiti and the Dominican Republic. It just goes to show how widespread the danger from these massive systems really is.
And Melissa's story, believe it or not, still isn't over. After crossing Cuba, it's now moving back out over open water. And that, of course, raises the big question of where it's headed next.
So forecasters are watching this thing like a hawk. The current track shows Melissa passing near the Bahamas and Bermuda over the next few days. A hurricane warning is still in effect for parts of the Bahamas as the storm continues its journey north. You know, when you step back, Melissa isn't really a freak of nature. It's actually the fourth Atlantic storm just this year to undergo that rapid intensification we talked about. And that leaves us with a really vital and pretty unsettling question for the future. In a world with warming oceans, are these monster storms, like Melissa, the ones that can just explode in strength overnight, are they simply the new normal?